How you been, man?
Well, I can give you the real answer or the fake answer. The medium answer is I'm well. The real answer is I'm way beyond well, and the fake answer is if I said something like I'm okay.
Always, I appreciate the real answer. That's what I'm always looking for. I don't like the fake answers, but hey, man, I wanted to tell you that you've had such a profoundly positive effect in my life, and I genuinely mean that. I'm not saying it to hoot your horn or to empathy praise you. I think about our conversation last time, and you were talking about spells and words. And one example I could give you is this podcast where I kept telling myself I was downplaying it because it was in my head. I was like, oh, well, this is just something I'm trying out. But once I shift that gear where my thoughts and my words were like, no, this is something I'm going to commit to. This is something I'm going to build on. And it's had such a positive effect on me, just that shift of mindset. I'm more confident in doing this. I'm more comfortable in doing this. I feel like I could be myself. I built a team around me. So thank you for that. How did this journey for you start? This journey of personal growth.
Well, I mean, we semi covered that a bit the last time, but we can go
Yeah.
back into that. So for as long as I can remember, I had desires to to be great, if you will, or to do things well, or to have a great life, or things of that nature. And so I just sort of set on that path. So I won't say I think because I don't even need to say I think. It's something that I can say was there from just recollection. And it's like once you're aware of a thing and you have enough of a desire towards that thing, then you're automatically that's the impetus and the catalyst that gets it going, right? Once you have that in you, and then you're stoking that flame, it's gonna keep like the fire is gonna keep building up, right? Or the desire keeps building, right? And so as that happens, you move forward, and things are gonna come into the picture as it pertains to, situations, events, books, people, whatever it may be that leads you to accomplishing the thing that it is that you're looking to accomplish. For me, again, it goes back to just that whole idea of wanting to be this sort of level of great or having this great life. And then at some point way back when, from when I can remember, is that I always kind of felt like different. People say I felt different than everyone else. I felt a level different, right? And I just had these thoughts of like I can fly. I mean, people would say they had these thoughts too, but I can fly. I could be this. I can do that. I can do all of this sort of stuff that always just sort of jumped into my head, and I just kept with it, kept with it, kept with it, kept with it, and to the point where, fast forward to today, now it's at a level where it's astronomical, right? In terms of just every aspect of just wanting, or not even saying wanting, because the whole idea of wanting means you don't have it. I have a great life, so I don't want a great life. It's just a matter of like flipping the lever up or the switch up to dial it up to higher levels of great, however way I define that. So that's how I would start that.
You said people coming and people going in your life, and I think also having a support system is pretty helpful. Like I think about someone who is always supportive of me is my wife. Like she's always telling me, "Hey, you got this. Keep building on it." Do you also have a system or like that around you, or is it more so like what you write, your books? Um, I know you've also went on a retreat, or is it the retreats? Like, what is it that keeps fueling the fire?
Uh, it comes down to it's not over. So if it's not over, if I'm still here, then I still have something to accomplish. And I don't measure my success by this outcome, this final outcome to say like I'm here, done, did there, finished. Because for me, it's like as long as I have breath, I have the ability to keep kind of creating greater or adding to the levels that I'm at. Because for me, because I think in terms of like this infinity idea, even in my symbol of my logo, there's a man that's the idea was to be a man who gets on a person that gets on an elevator. The only floor that they can press is the infinite floor, like infinity,
Mm.
right? But it didn't
Yeah.
actually doesn't actually look like that. So it looks like a person, a man. It looks like myself actually,
Yeah.
walking into like this infinite door. So what does that mean for me? It's like there's always something more to accomplish. There's always something more to achieve. There's always something more to work towards. So that's kind of like my idea was just keep going, right? And then but that mainly is not specifically what I'm accomplishing, it's how many more people I can help to see things in a greater way, sort of break out of the shell that they're in, the limited vision that they're in, those types of things. Because for me, my accomplishments, as I even said in my book, the measure of success that I have is really about how much I can give away. And within giving away is helping see people see themselves greater than they appear to themselves as, to how allow people to get to a point of where they get to a greater understanding. And my mission to raise the consciousness of billions sounds very lofty, but I'm on the page of doing it, or on par with doing it, because I just keep going. And it's not even just my efforts. It's like I do things and people like share my stuff, right? So it's like it has this ripple effect. So it's not even thinking that I have to do it all myself, because it's not about just me. It's always about we.
Yeah. And I see that, like, when you talk about sharing it, I feel like when I project what I've learned from you onto like people I'm around. Again, I'm using my wife as an example because we live together, we sleep together, we share a safe we share a space together. It starts to rub off on her. It starts to rub off positively around the people I'm with, my coworkers, my family. But tell me about this retreat that you were just on.
I'm always doing some type of retreat or some type of exploration type thing. The one that you're referring to would have to be, because I know we've touched on it, is back in December. I went to a Buddhist temple in Massachusetts. So the particular type of practice, this is under the meditative practice of Vipassana. And Vipassana is a meditative practice where it's actually non-denominational. It's just not, it doesn't, you don't have to be of a certain religion, but it is with the Buddhist people themselves, or Buddhist practitioners. But the practice itself is essentially um, you sit in meditation for whatever period of time, and the idea is that this you'll have all these stuff going on in your body, right? And the more attuned you are to your body, you'll feel these like sensations everywhere. Because when you're really attuned, you'll know that you'll feel sensations in your toe and your arm and your elbow, right? But ultimately, what those sensations are typically has to do with the fact of like how, like maybe you're dealing with certain issues in your life, certain situations, what have you, right? So they're coming up as sensations in the body. And what with Vipassana, it's saying to you, don't just ignore the sensations, like actually acknowledge them, but don't acknowledge them where you like put all this emphasis on them and get all carried away and get all bent out of shape, but acknowledge the sensations and then let them pass. So if you do this enough, allowing the sensations to come to the surface and pass, sensations come to the surface and pass, eventually what's going to happen is you're going to get to a place of kind of like freedom, because you're not allowing these things to take over your energy or your mental or what have you, right? So what they are practicing is this point of getting to a place where you're not bothered by these things. So like what they will call like if you have these big cravings for things, it leads to aversion, it leads to like misery. If you have like aversions to things, it leads to misery. They want you to get to what's called an equanimous state, where you just sort of like even kill, because these things are coming up in your life, these sensations are just as you're sitting there, and they just sort of pass through, and you get to equanimous, just like right in the middle. So and that's a state of freedom, because once you're not bothered by all these happenings and feelings and such, you're just sort of at peace, right? So that was what I went to do. I did it for they have different periods where you can go for like 10 days and 20 days and 30 days, and you once you've done 10, a few tens or whatever, you can do a three. I think at least 1 10 you can do a 3 day, but you start at least doing a 10 day, where for 10 days is no talking. The only talking you can do is if you ask the instructor or assistant instructor, like you need help, or just you're having some difficulty. So that's the only person you would person or persons you would talk to. And then otherwise, for those 10 days, you take what's called a code of silence, or noble silence. So it's noble silence is not even acknowledging the other people who are around you in the space, not talking to them in any way, or acknowledge, or even like hand gestures, or looking at anybody in the face. And it's not until the 10th day when you go to the first morning meditation that you could actually break the code of silence and or the noble silence and then get back into sort of talking to people and that type of thing. But that was what I did in December of last year.
That is wild to not to be on a silent retreat for 10 days. Did you ever along the way, did you feel the urge like I need to break this because well, let me ask you this. Did you 10 days, did you the whole thing you were silent?
Yeah, I mean, I had one question for the assistant instructor, and the only other time I talked a little bit was when they brought each individual to the front to talk to the instructors as we're going through these meditations each day, and they want to get, kind of check in with you. And I would just, they would ask, "Oh, how are you? Is this okay? Whatever." And I would just, "Yeah, yeah, okay, okay," and that was it. But no, I had no desire, no, necessarily no desire, because for me, I mean, since I've been on this journey, I've put myself through some tricky stuff, some, what people may deem some hard things. And I have enough of a belief or even know in myself that I can do things. So I like really just tell myself I can do it because I have this understanding like I can do anything. So for me to say it is not enough necessarily, but then to just say, you know what, I can do it. Let's put myself to the test. And when I put myself to the test, it's shown up that I can actually make these things happen. So
Can I ask you when you did break the silence to ask the assistant, what was it that you asked him or her?
So this practice it could be a bit tricky because you're sitting there with your thoughts, and what's happening a lot of times for a lot of us is those thoughts. As you're sitting there, you're having all this stuff going in your head. Oh, my life, okay. So that's hard for a lot of us to just sit there, right? To go through a period of time where you're by yourself, having to contend with yourself, right? That wasn't my issue. I had thoughts, but my thoughts were more of like, hey, life is great. I love everyone, like that kind of thing, because I'm always doing that type of thing in my head where I'm saying I love the world and praying for people and the whole bit. That's just all day, like well throughout days and such. But for me, the tough part at some point was the sitting, where it was actually a bit taxing on my back because we had to sit there for periods of time, an hour here, an hour there, an hour there, and specifically with the mandatory group sits, which were 3 times a day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the early afternoon, 1 hour in the mid afternoon. So that was a little tricky for me at first because it was just like my back was just really getting like roasted, if you will, and I had to. So I asked the assistant instructor, "Hey, my back, this is really taxing my back," and he was like, "Well, maybe ask the actual instructor." But then just how I am, because I'm quick to sort of like work towards a solution. So I said I didn't ask. I just said, you know what? I was like, I'll figure this out. So after that, like several iterations, whatever, I started to sort of practice with like different ways to sit that could like take some of the stress off my back. And I got to a point where I was able to find something that worked. So it wasn't necessary for me to go to the instructor and ask.
I swear to God, I feel like this is what's going to happen. I, in a few years, I feel like I'm gonna get a random text from you that, hey, I'm a Buddhist now. That's what I've done. That's what I've become.
No, that's funny you say that because a really good friend of mine, as you talked about support structures, we've been talking this way since we were little kids, so like dozens of years, and we have similar paths. I'm doing some more stuff over here. He's doing some stuff, but we can have these conversations. We've been talking about this sort of greatness path and being this way in life and doing these big things, whatever, however you want to label. But in any case, he uses the term. I don't know where he got it, but I like it because he was saying like you can essentially, we or can be this sort of what he called a cosmopolitan monk, whereas you're sort of doing these monk type things or Buddhist type things in terms of like the meditation and going within and these types of things, and then and being able to do that while still being in this whole construct of like city life and jobs and chaos and all of that. And yeah, so I like that term, cosmopolitan monk.
I don't know anyone that has like life on pause and then just said, I'm gonna go do this. I've heard it through social media, but like in my circle of influence, I don't really know anybody. Do you know anyone who said, I'm gonna stop this corporate nonsense or whatever it may be, I'm gonna go be a monk? Anyone, you know?
Kind of ish. I got to think about the full like the because I know a couple people who are doing. Yeah, sort of like this lifestyle. For example, I go to this and I'm actually going in a few weeks. This will be I think my fourth time. I go to this yoga meditation retreat at this farm where they practice Hare Krishna, they're Hare Krishnas. So, and there are some monks there. Um, Actually, they're one of the monks was actually very compelling, great storyteller, just really, you want to sit there and listen to him all day. But he actually was saying how, once upon a time, he's a young kid, he's hanging out with his friends, the whole bit, they're all doing kid stuff, college, high school, whatever, the whole bit. And then he got to a point where um he used to be the guy who came up with like the things to do, like the sorted stuff, whatever, like the fun stuff. And then there was a point where I forget how he exactly led to like how he broke it down, but he said there was a point where he eventually came to an understanding, like because I think he was like in school and he was trying to get answers to stuff and he would ask questions and it was like they never really had all the answers because like school doesn't give you all the answers, right? And so that led him to like searching, and somehow that search for looking for the answers led him to becoming a monk. But it was funny when he kind of started the conversion because he had a friend who used to look to him for all the stuff, the girls and the alcohol and all that stuff. And then once he like was no longer on that path, the friend was like basically like I forgot how it went, but he essentially the friend just like stopped talking to him. Right. So that's one. I don't know the guy, but I'm just giving you an example because he is someone who had his regular life. I think he went to Columbia. I don't know how much work he ever got into. I'm not sure if he like actually went down the path of that, but I know he was just, your regular guy going to these schools or whatever. And then eventually just said, I need more. And then just in the search for those answers somehow led him to this that particular way of life. And that's at least one person. I'm sure I could think about a couple others as well, or a few others. Not something I'm
Trying,
necessarily.
I'm trying to find this video of Buddhism Hassan. I don't know if you could spell it for me. I'm trying to
Vipassana?
find
Yeah,
P. Yeah.
Vipassana.
Oh, Vipassana.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. I'm pulling this up because this looks pretty cool.
yeah. So and I have a friend. So I share a lot of these things. More specifically the people who I think could benefit from it, and I just share in general. But one of my friends who's kind of taken up under me, he signed up for the next one of the next installments. Actually, it's in July, and he's on the wait list now. But I'm in touch with my friend who put me onto this to see if we can advance him up the wait list or at least advance him off the wait list. Um, and a friend who I'm working with to have this, to potentially move him up. She's actually done it a bunch of times. She's the one who yeah, she and her husband have done it a bunch of times. Her husband has even done 20-day ones, and he just more recently completed a 30-day silent meditation a few weeks ago.
Okay, here I got it pulled up here. Meaning to see things as they really are is a core Buddhism meditation practice emphasizing mindfulness and insight into the true nature of reality, focusing on observing, arising, and passing of thoughts and sensations without judgment.
Yeah, so
Okay,
that's what
and
I
then
touched on.
yeah,
Those things to pass
then
through.
here's a little video of it too. Let's see if we can play this.
This question requires only a brief answer, but it's maybe helpful. I would like to know if the thought-watching meditation Vipassana would be useful in increasing my presence and diminishing my identification with the ego. If so, could you or Kim provide an example meditation? I won't provide an example meditation. Kim wants to do it at some point of Vipassana. It would take quite a while. Vipassana is a Buddhist, originally associated with Buddhism, but there's nothing particularly Buddhist about it. It's directing your attention into the body, basically, in a very structured way. And it's a good meditation. It's basically inner body awareness, and it's, for some people, it's an excellent meditation. It's inner body awareness in a much more structured way than I do it when I point out the possibility of having your attention inside the body. It definitely takes your attention away from thinking, and so you connect with being. Vipassana retreats tend to be boot camps for meditation where you spend many, many hours each day sitting in meditation. And it can be quite an ordeal, but that could be helpful too, because either you can't stand it anymore and run away, or you surrender completely. It's not as pleasant initially as our retreat, but it can take you deep. It can take you deep. It's not for everybody. It's fine.
Okay. So he's saying exactly the things that you were talking about. It's an inner body thing. It takes you deep. What does he mean by that? Can you expand on that? Like when he's saying it takes you deep, like where deep into what?
So we use these, or we hear these statements, and for a lot of us, they're just cliches, like the answers are within, those types of like statements around that, like all the answers are inside of you. That's essentially what he's alluding to, because if you sit with yourself quietly, and you actually give yourself permission to do that, and quiet the mind in terms of the monkey mind, as they say, or the distractions, like I can't do this. I gotta watch TV now. I gotta get up and eat, and like all of that stuff. If you can really, which we can, but I'm just saying, if you can really do that and sit with yourself quietly, right? And even if maybe to ask a couple questions, like say, what is truth? What am I here on this life for? Right? Like something along the lines of those as prompts. But you don't even have to do that, because that's, like I said, you can just sit quietly. But if you do the quiet sitting, you will start to get answers. So for me specifically, I do a lot of quiet sitting anyway throughout, the weeks and stuff like that. So it's not atypical for me to do that. This was just a longer stretch overall. For me, like I was able to get some profound insight off of that 10-day silent meditation, to the point where it was like profound. Just some profound stuff, and the specific profound.
Can we ask? Yeah, can we ask you? If you're willing to share?
Yeah,
because I think everybody would get such an amazing insight if you could share some of this stuff.
Well, my life is super intentional, and so with the intentionality of the way I live my life, and the fact that I've asked for truth and asked to be open to receive all the sort of gifts that life could offer, I'm always getting signs. Right? We're always all getting signs, but we're a lot of us not attuned to them. So it's like, because you're not on the frequency of that awareness, consciousness state, we're getting signs, many of us, but we're not able to connect on what those signs are. So for me, just to even speak to what happened for me, one aspect is that, like, leading into Vipassana, I have been getting signs that I was like free, like got this like free feeling. Now this sounds like, what does this mean to be free, right? But I'm just going to state it that way. I was just feeling really free, like, man, I just feel like I can do anything. I mean, like really feeling like this, overwhelming feeling. And not to say I wasn't doing things, but just this feeling of, and in addition to, like, I'm living my life, I'm doing things, like I'm feeling like super free and able to do anything and everything, to the point where I actually, one thing not say let me, but one thing I had done just before Vipassana is because I was getting this free feeling and signs of like checking different things out. So there was I went to see Aladdin because I got prompted to see it. So I went to see Aladdin and check out my work, check out how this breaks down. So Aladdin, I'm taking a lot in, right? I'm being allowed in, and it's all adding up. It's all adding up. All three of those things came to me, right? That insight. And so, and then as I'm going through that, processing that, it was saying to me, because Aladdin is about freedom, right? So here's how that goes. This genie who's giving the granting the wishes to Aladdin is asking for freedom. So the genie's job is to grant wishes, but the genie's like, I want my own wish. I want to be free. So ultimately, the genie does get his freedom. But the thing about it, what happens when you get freedom? Here comes the theme song. It's a whole new world. It's a whole new world when you're free, and you feel as if you're flying high above on a magic carpet, right? So that's sort of been my life. Like I feel that way. Like I'm just like, wow, feeling this way, this level of freedom, and then I go see this Aladdin, and it's all adding up, and I'm being allowed, and it's all this sort of stuff, and then a whole new world. Right. So then fast forward to the Vipassana, which I had gone to after I had seen Aladdin. There were a couple other things like that came up as freedom, in my life in terms of movies that I watched. So I go there like maybe few weeks later, something like a few weeks later at most, and I'm sitting through meditation, but say come maybe day 7, I think it was day 7, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I get this overwhelming feeling of like you're free. Like I get this like confirmational feeling, you're free, or like insight. So it's like my internal speaks to me, and it was like you're free, free to be, free to do, free to act, do, and be whatever you want. And I started crying, to the point where I really wanted to wail cry, but I just said, "Hey, this is silent in here. I'm not gonna like make all this noise because I don't want to interrupt." So I just kind of broke down like slightly for a few seconds or whatever, just like kind of cried about it because it was like a confirmation, which is a lot of my life is confirmational. But that to speak to the freedom aspect, that's what I got. One of the things that I got from that, the confirmation of being like in this place where you're actually free. And we all are, but we don't realize that because of all the stuff and the noise in our, in our lives. And I can't do this because I'm this color, which is not real, or I was born here, or I have this job and therefore I can't do it. Like all of this stuff that's not real that we make real, and so it traps us, right? And when you
What
trap
was it that thought? What was it that broke you down? What was that thought?
It was exactly what I said. I just had a thought that came to me. You're free to be, free to act, free to
Okay.
be, free to do whatever you want. So it was a confirmation of the freedom feeling that I have been feeling. But then the thought was like, you're free to you're totally free, bro. So,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
like, get it going. Whatever you say, it's yours. And not to say I didn't, know that or whatever, but it was like it's kind of like there's a point of where we say no. No is actually living it. So a lot of like knowing for a lot of us is this sort of like know where we are more of intellectually knowing it, right? But that doesn't mean you actually know it, because know means like being and doing. And life is more about experiential. And I'm not saying everything has to be experienced, because you could just inherently know some stuff, right? And ultimately you really inherently know everything, but because of all this crap that gets thrown in your head and all this stuff, you kind of like lose access to the know. So there's some things that in order for you to know them, you have to kind of live it out. Like I know I can do anything. I can. Okay, let's see. Like let's try one thing that you kind of thought you couldn't do. Like, and that's the practice for it. And once you do it, that's where life is experiential. It's meant to be lived. And once you can then start living some of these things out, you can start to confirm that you actually are what you say you are, able to do what you say you do, or be what you say you can be. So
Going back to the boot camp, the 10-day retreat, the boot camp, why is it that some people can't just join it? What, like, is there an initiation process you have to go? And anyone could just do this. Oh, okay. Because you said your friend has to go through a boot camp first. Eh, No? Okay. Okay.
mm-mm. You just sign up, and
Okay.
if if there's space, then you'll get they may like ask you a couple questions depending on what you put in your application, right? But let's say generally speaking, I mean, as long as everything checks, you'll get put through, and then if you're like one of the first X number, that get processed, then you'll be an actual candidate, like you'll actually be in there. And then if
Okay.
you like surpass the whatever the number is, like 60 or so men, 60 or so women, then you'll be put on a
Okay.
wait list. But people tend to drop off. So that wherever you may fall on the wait list, as long as you fall within that first few, and some
Did
people
you
drop off then.
did you see people drop off along the 10 days? Like, I
Yeah,
can't do this.
yeah, yeah. Well, so we're not talking, but you can see where like somebody was sitting in front of you, right? I did see like where there were two people that were sitting in front of me that after several days, eventually they were no longer sitting in front of me. Like when we did the group sit. Because a lot of them, there were three mandatory, as I said, three obligatory group sets. Well, obligatory if you really follow the rules. Of course, nobody can make you do it. But they would come out in the group sets for the first X days, like maybe up to day 4, 5, 6, and then after that, I didn't see these guys anymore. So I'm sure they said, like from what I heard in terms of from the instruction, I believe they said day 2 and day 6 are the hardest. Like
Was it true?
generally speaking, from many people.
What do you think from your experience? What day was the hardest? You said you broke down in day 7, so I'm guessing
No,
it's around.
I didn't break down like it was hard. I broke down because I got a confirmation. That's what
That's
that
what I
was.
mean.
Yeah, that
So,
wasn't hard. That was just because it was like my life was showing me I'm free. And then I got this confirmation. So I was like, wow. And then I just like broke down like a good cry breaking down. So it was that part wasn't hard. For me, there was an initial, maybe that was day two where I was like, what am I doing here? Like this, and then I kind of just like shrugged it off because I'm so on top of like once I make a commitment, I'm gonna stick to it. So I just shut myself up like real quick. Like as soon as that thought came in my head, I was like, shut up. You're here to do this. You said you're gonna do it. And that might have come up like twice-ish, but if I recall, I know that was early on, so I want to say somewhere around day two, but not so much like where maybe somebody else, because for example, there was a guy who was sitting near me to my right, and when we eventually got to talking, he said that I think it was day 2 and 4, day 2 and 6. It might have been 2 and 6. He said like he was literally about to leave, and he said the instructor actually was able to persuade him to stay. And then after when it was all said and done, he was happy he finished it. But it's tricky because I say the hardest part, if it's not the physical, which is physical, is very tough. It could be taxing on your legs, your back, and other parts of your body. Is also the fact that many of us don't sit with ourselves, so that's really tough to be seated by yourself for X. So when on that video it was talked about how many like hours you do. I mean, you don't have to do the hours, but on the schedule there were up to like 10 hours of meditation for
okay,
me.
so it's not that you're just completely mute for 24 hours. You practice being silent for X amount of hours, like 10 hours,
Well,
then
you
you go
practice being
back to
silent all day, but then there's the actual seated practice of meditation in addition to that. So you're always silent,
oh,
but then you're
okay.
actually physically now sitting down in this meditate in this,
Mhm.
pose or whatever, where you're actually now going through the process of like they're walking to you, giving you sort of some type of instruction for a period of minutes, and then your rest of it is you just sort of going through the scanning of your body or whatever it is as you're guiding yourself through the sensations coming up and passing through. So there's an actual sit down process of meditation, and on the schedule there's like 10 hours of that if you actually abide by that, right? But if you don't, you might go out for a walk, you might go in your room and take a nap, right? So it's you're a grown person, you can do what you want,
Are
right?
you in any sort of attire?
No, you wear whatever you want. But you don't.
Okay.
But they didn't want you to have like legs exposed, certain things like that, just because it was meant to be like more modest. So
Yeah.
like women's not to be wearing like short skirts and things like that. So the goal idea was like wear like long pants,
Yeah.
and I guess you could wear like a short sleeve shirt, but not like a woman wearing crop tops and whatever, not like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Women were on one side and men were on the other side, and we didn't interact with each other until the 10th day, where they opened it up for a few hours and we got to interacting, and then that was it, shut it down. And then on the final day when we left is again you can like interact because now we're leaving.
Are they feeding you throughout the process when you're sitting down for 10 hours? They must be giving you guys water, some sort of food to.
Well, you get your regular you get breakfast at 8 o'clock, and we had lunch at like a little after 11, and then there was a snack later on in the evening. If you
Okay.
chose. So
Are there
two full meals and one snack.
are there psychedelics involved at all throughout the process?
No, they actually prefer you don't do any of that stuff. I mean, I put it on my
Mm,
application that I use it. They didn't say
hmm.
anything to me, I guess, because how I wrote it, where I'm like, this is a part of my life. They didn't say, but one of my friends who said that she had at least done it once, they told her like this ideally is not to be used with that. But they can't really tell me that because they could tell me what they want, but for me, it's like this is part of my life. So, and I know what it's doing for me. So, and so it's not going to be interruptive. Like it's all part of the process. Where for me, it actually constantly like helps me to evolve in so many different ways. And I understand what they're saying, but that would be for what I know to be someone that's like not as on top of their practice, or maybe they're not as just sort of in tune with themselves and things like that. But for me, it's like a very comfortable part of my life. So I can
Yeah.
integrate all this stuff and it just sort of becomes additive.
Psychedelics for the longest time have they get one of the worst reputation, but I saw something on 60 Minutes about how there's these veterans who go on these retreat, and these veterans are suffering from PTSD from the shit they saw in war. And if they go on they've tried several medication and depression medication, anxiety medication, and nothing seems to work. And so they go on this retreat and they try psychedelics. And rather than me kind of explaining it, let's play this clip where I could show you.
The vets drank psilocybin, a psychoactive compound found in some mushrooms, put on blindfolds to shut out distractions, and lay down. The retreat was organized and paid for by the Heroic Hearts Project, a nonprofit that's helped more than 1,000 U.S. veterans with combat-related PTSD access psychedelics.
Them seeking this type of unauthorized therapy is just another indication on why we need to.
Last year, for the first time, the Veterans Administration announced it would begin funding its own clinical trials to treat post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and addiction using 2 psychedelic drugs, psilocybin and MDMA. Even if these trials are successful, it would be years before the VA could prescribe either drug for its patients. Thousands of veterans who are suffering aren't waiting. Desperate for help, they're attending psychedelic retreats in countries where the drugs are legal to use, mostly in indigenous ceremonies. This past March, we were invited to join 9 veterans who traveled to the west coast of Mexico for a psychedelic journey. Medical screening and no family history of psychosis or schizophrenia. When we were there, a local doctor was on site.
Basically, in a nutshell, they go on this retreat, they try a psychedelic, and some of them, the effect they have is a very positive effect, where they feel like they were healed from some of these wounds from and PTSD they've had from war. And I even saw this article about on the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and if you go into psychedelics, here it talks about, oh, here we go, how psychedelic drugs may help with depression. Sorry, so it's from the National Institute of Health. That's what I mean. How psychedelic drugs may help with depression. Some types of psychedelic drugs, such as psilocybin, which is the one that was in that video the U.S. veterans were taking, and MDMA, ecstasy, have shown promise as therapies for treatment-resistant depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. They appear to work by encouraging the growth of new connection between neurons in the brain. This ability of the brain to make new connections is called plasticity. Exactly how these drugs promote plasticity in the brain has been unclear. If the mechanism could be understood, it might be possible to develop related drugs that can promote brain plasticity without unwanted hallucinogenic effects. Previous studies have found that psychedelic drugs encourage plasticity by blending to a cellular receptor in neurons called the 5-hydroxytryptamine to a receptor, but other compounds that bend to 5-HT2AR don't promise plasticity. I don't know what any of these scientific words are. These include steroidine, a chemical messenger affected by some antidepressant treatment. Okay, so there are studies that show that hallucinogenics have a place in this world and can be used to heal people with depression, or even these veterans that we were just looking at that are suffering from post-traumatic stress. But I'll be honest with you, I'm too much of a pussy to try it, but I will somewhere down the line.
Mm-hmm.
What has your experience been like, though?
Beyond heavenly. We'll just say heavenly. We'll come back down a bit. Yeah. So even touching on some of what that language was in terms of breaking it down. So here's what I'll give you just to put somewhat in perspective. Yeah. They talked about plasticity and creating new neural connections, or neurons. So it's going to create new neural connections, because ultimately that's really what it's doing. There was a we'll say experiment, but there was in Japan, they had they took a mold. So mold is in the same family as like similar same family as like the shrooms and stuff like that. But they took a mold and they put it into a petri dish, and the mold actually created essentially like a path that aligned with or was in tune with or similar to the path of the that they created for the Japan train station or subway, right? So if you think about that, with this mold creating this path, and to put it in a greater perspective, is that it's going to, when going into your body and going into your brain, is creating those new neural pathways, and that path that it creates is the best path, right? So that's what's happening, is like, if your thinking is a little off, be it because of some traumas, be it because of like some crap that you were told, some lies and things and stories that you've been fed, and in a number of different reasons as to why you're thinking the way you think, the shrooms can necessarily be used or can be introduced to where they're going to take away this poor thinking that you have and set you on a track to like going the right way, right? Whereas if maybe you have some cloudiness about your life and ambiguity, like I don't know, whatever, and things like that, this shroom going into your body and then going into your brain and creating those new neural pathways that are the direct path as to like where you need to be headed, this is what you're going to have happen to you. So for me, I had already a certain path, and I was doing okay, but having my certain levels of like, maybe like questioning certain things is, some of us do because of, we hear one thing and then we hear another thing, and it's like, is it this, is it that? But then for me, the biggest thing that needed correcting was like the fact of like me thinking like I knew everything, right? Because yeah, we think we're smart, sure, fine, whatever. And I had this sort of like I know kind of like kind of mentality. But the thing about it is there's a difference between what I know and there's a difference with what there is to know. Unless I know equals what there is to know, then you don't know. You know what you know. And unless you know equals all know, then you just know what you know. And that's the limited box. So you get out of that box of what you know and get to the point of what there is to know, then you get to know all, right? And to be humble enough to say that I don't know is going to allow you into the path or into the space of being able to get to the all know. So for me, it was like getting out of my know. And this was where, in conjunction with the shrooms, and also someone pointing this out to me, because I did a course last year called Landmark. And Landmark is a self-development course that teaches you just like different things, sort of being better in your life, and, finding the different gaps in your life, blind spots, things of that nature, right? So this was a blind spot for me. Well, seemingly knowing, but obviously not knowing, because I'm still doing the same thing of like, oh, I know, look, I'm the man, look at whatever, right? When I need to like kind of like, put myself out there and say that I show that I'm intelligent. But it was pointed out to me by one of the instructor of the Landmark course, a guy by the name of Larry. He says this in front of a whole bunch of people, like 100 people that I was in the course with. He said, he said a little bit more, and I'll just state it, and this is not to toot my own horn, and as you say, tooting horns. He said, this guy is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But he said, consider your biggest strength is your biggest weakness. And I said, accept it. And that was last February. And since then, in conjunction with shrooms and things that I do, is like I've taken off like exponentially because I got myself out of the way. So that's what I'll speak to, God. I mean, there's plenty more I can say, at least more I can say. But
Yeah.
the key idea is, or understanding is, the fact that these things helping to correct the way your mind works, or the way your brain works, whatever, create a new neural pathways to set you on the right course. And one big statement around shrooms is that they point you to the truth. So if there's anything going on in your life that needs addressing, they're gonna let you know. They're gonna show that to you, right? You're gonna be put up against that thing that you're dodging, avoiding. Yeah. Problem with the relationship, problem at work, problem with your body. You're not taking care of your health. It's going to put that smack in your face. And in some cases, actually doing the correction and fixing things as well as just repairing cells in your body and repairing your brain and whatever. But the other part of it is like really you having to contend with like, you know what, I got to address this thing. So a lot of people are afraid of that. To touch on the other side of it, why a lot of people may be afraid of shrooms. First, they've been taught the propaganda, which is the lie. So that's one thing, which is silly. But then beyond that is also knowing the other side that I'm going to be introduced to this stuff. And a lot of people, in terms of the truth, things in my life that need addressing, and a lot of us not being ready because we're like, in a sense, I'll say living a lie, right? Not being authentic in our lives. And we're not ready to show up for ourselves as our true selves. So shrooms if you do enough shrooms, you're going to have to show up as your true self.
Someone like me who's never done shrooms, what would be my experience? Is this something that you could project because you've had experience, or is everyone's experience unique to them?
Definitely unique, but at the same time, there are similarities. And the way that I introduce it to people is to say, do it very intentionally. So not going into it with an expectation, but going into it with an intention. It's two different things. Expectation is like, I need to have this. Like when I do this, you better show me this and this and give me this and this and this and this. No. Everything I do is about intention, right? Right? Putting attention to it where you put the energy towards that, like I'm the focus, I'm gonna do this, right? So good energy, good focus, good love towards it, and that type of thing. And then intention is like, this sort of like desire you have towards it, right? Like it's a good desire, right? And the intention, like being intentional, meaning what you're doing, going behind this with full, I'm here to do this. I'm not going to play around with this. And then also like this is a truth which people I share this with many, or at least a few people, and I say like you got to talk to stuff, like if you think about this, right? Like there's water in your body, right? And if you're playing music to around you or whatever, and you're being yelled at or scolded, whatever, like the water is actually being affected by this. There was a guy, Dr. Moto, who did some studies. He passed away some years ago, and he did studies with water, and he like played different sounds towards water, like some negative sounds, like yelling at the water, whatever it might have been. It froze the water. The water that got like the negative stuff, it froze differently in terms of the crystallization of the water, and you saw like it was like some chaotic looking crystallization of the water versus the water that got like beautiful music, whether it be like classical music and things like that. And you saw this beautiful crystallization. So with shrooms, I forgot where I was going with this, but like it's gonna give you the truth as I mentioned. And so intentionality is you talk to it and you say, hey, I would like, not like specifically what you would like, but I'm going into this with this, I'm open, ready to receive. Please take me on a journey is the sort of thing. Because when I was first introduced, my friend was like, be intentional. I think he said attention and intention. So I took that as my way of going about it, and this is what I always express to people: just and this could be all areas of life in general, just to be intentional, right? Just to put attention, the right type of attention with detachment. Don't be detached to things, because detachment, when you're attached to it, is like you're expecting this thing. Again, leave the expectation alone, put attention towards it, which is the energy, the right type of positive energy, and have intention around it so that like you're activating, what it is that you're putting in there in terms of the energy and the attention, so that it then, sets you on a path where you can get a good result, overall. But one other thing to speak to when you say like people's different experiences, again, goes back to this part of this statement where I said a lot of us are afraid or to face the truth. Right. So that's one thing. But the thing about the truth is like there may be some things in your life that need to be corrected. For example, you may be living in a very foul way, right? And people know because how you're living. And so when you get the shroom and the shroom show you some dark stuff and people say I had a bad trip, it's not that you had a bad trip. You just mislabeling it because there's no such thing as good or bad or whatever. It's like, Shakespeare said. It's the thinking that makes it so. And there are certain things we could label bad if you like, molesting me, whatever. We're not going there. But otherwise, we label stuff good and bad because we don't understand that there's an opportunity to learn from that thing, right? So when you're doing a shroom, maybe and you see these dark entities or whatever, and you go, ah, but it's like, dude, maybe you need to stop behaving that way in your life. Maybe you need to start treating yourself and people better. Maybe you need to stop with the drugs and these other things. So that's what is really showing you, and it's then for you to take it upon yourself to actually get the message. So to get the message, if you're going to be bold enough, would be to say, you know what, I'm open, and whatever message, please help me to see this. And you talk to it in that way, and then you will be able to go through it, get this supposed bad trip or whatever it may be, and say, I see what that's about. I need to make this correction. I need to do this. I need to take this out of my life. I need to do whatever it is that I need to do to make it better.
It sounds like what you're saying is like what you project out into the world is what your experience will be like if you were to take.
Yeah, let me add this. So I didn't say specifically that, but that's a good point. Wherever you are energetic wise or feeling wise, you're gonna exacerbate that. So if you're feeling bad, or not bad, but like not so good, down spirit or whatever, you're going to make that worse. So that's one thing that you want to be careful with and going into like a journey to make sure you like have a good energy, positivity, whatever, because then that'll be exacerbated. But then what I'm saying specifically is that wherever you are, the shrooms will put you where you need to be. So if they're in addressing the truths, of your life and that type of thing, I'll give you a scenario. Recently, a friend of a friend, so I'll just call him a friend. He recently did his first round of shrooms, but he also on top of that, because I'm a big sound bath person. I do these what's called sound baths. He's like they have like these singing bowls that the
Oh, okay.
practitioners
Okay. Okay.
use, and
Okay.
they
Okay.
may use
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
a gong and different things. But this energy is gonna feed your body and rejuvenate cells and get you sort of elevated and escalated to the point where you're aligned and in tune with like, let's just say like the universe, right? The universe is one song. So when you do these sound baths, it like really gets you reacclimated and re-energized to where, you're back in the space of where your body should be in terms of like the energy space. And then on top of it, like I said, the guy he did this for the first time with the shrooms. Man, this experience he had was he couldn't even explain himself. But one thing he did say is to talk about where I say the shrooms will point you to where you are. He said when he was in the shrooms journey, his eyes was closed. He kept seeing visions of his mom and his kids. So I said, again, this is going to show you the truth, well, what you need to deal with in your life, yada yada yada. He proceeded to tell me that he, as the one of several siblings, he said he used to get the worst treatment by his mom when he was a kid, right? But then he said of recent, he and his mom were in a better space, and in fact, she had been over to his place and like kind of stayed over and that type of thing. So I said, there you go. It's showing you where you currently are, and if you need to currently address something, or showing you the truth of like where your life is in some aspect. So that was one. Well, that's a particular example of that. But there are many, and I can say this from someone who's done enough that I can tell you, um, yeah, there's a lot of truth that you're going to be exposed to, and it's for you to like decide what you're going to do with it. But running away doesn't help. And that led me, just in general, to be a very authentic person at this point, because I was wanting to, even before the shroom stuff, I said I would like to be in truth. I like to live in truth. I like to live in truth. Sure enough, shrooms eventually came up in my life as well and helped to introduce me to that. And now I'm like on this sort of super truthful kind of authentic life, and it's I noticed for me that I'm so authentic that it actually freaks people out. Like it's too much for people. Like they run away from me.
Do certain images project certain things? Like if you're, I don't know, if you take shrooms and let's say you feel like you fall into another dimension, or let's say you fall into heaven, or let's say you fall into hell, like what does that really mean? Like, or like do you feel like you fall into a different universe, a
Yeah,
different
you could.
place? Is
You're saying
or
fall,
is
but I
it
like to
is it
say
a state?
ride. Yeah, you're gonna travel into different dimensions. That's just how it is. Your spirit is gonna take. I mean, not always. It depends on how much what you do and what was meant to be in that particular trip, whatever. But it's not necessarily that you're moving into these different dimensions. Sometimes just sort of you have an insight, while you're just sitting here watching TV or whatever, and you on. But otherwise, like maybe if you do a more concentrated amount, you're gonna
Yeah.
go off into a journey where you're actually going to literally feel like you're on like in another dimension or multi dimensions or have you, which I've had plenty of journeys like that where I just felt like I was. So I use words that, again, just even saying it, people are like, what is this guy talking about? But I have other friends who've done shrooms who can attest to that and say, like, I feel what you feel. So I'll say, like, feeling like infinite, feeling a level of God consciousness. I have a friend who did a bunch of shrooms, and he said that amount that he did that time, he felt, and I have had this feeling too a number of times, where he felt like he could make anything happen or go, like problem go away or anything happen within an instant. That's how powerful you feel. Like you could feel that way, but not specifically like just on some small dose, but you can have that because the way shrooms, what are shrooms? Shrooms are like what I call cheat code, right? The shroom grows as what they call the fruit body. That's the part that you see above ground with, the that looks like the, I don't know what it looks like. But in any case, that main part, and not all shrooms look exactly the same, but the main part that grows above ground is called the fruit body. And then underneath the fruit body is what's called the mycelial network, which is essentially like the root-like network, electromagnetic root-like network that's basically feeding the plant floor, all of the plant floor, sucking in nutrients, putting out nutrients. So what's happening there is like the way I term it, getting this from a friend, is that shrooms are connected to the soul of the planet. So when you ingest your shroom, and there are different ones that give you different effects or whatever, different levels of whether it's hallucinations, not all of that, different levels of whether you see stuff like colors and other stuff, like they're all different, right? And some are stronger than others. Different types. They got like golden teachers and penis envy and blue Louis Vuitton and albino, steel magnolia, like a whole bunch of them, right? Or at least a number of them.
Yeah.
But in any case, being connected to the soul of the planet, you're absorbing levels of this when you take a shroom. And that's why you're able to see the types of things that you see when you do see them, when you take certain amounts, whatever. And so your journey could be very different, whereas like it could be maybe you feel more like in the body, but you feel like very in touch with nature. You start to feel like very in tune. You start to hear maybe differently, like you start to pick up on like different sounds. You start to just feel like in touch with nature. You start to feel like love towards everything, just like this open, ultimate, agape, all-encompassing love. It just depends, but a lot of them may have you feel that way. And then on top of that, like again, you can go into deeper levels, especially if you do more, where you just like it's hard to even explain to people. And because many people are so afraid to like touch these areas and go into it, they just will never experience it. And it's just something that sounds too far and far-fetched. But I'll even just like plead with people, not specifically to do shroom, but just stuff to where I'm like, do you want to feel like superhuman? And like that word doesn't process, right? But when I say superhuman, like how you feel, think about the best you've ever felt, and then take that and multiply that by a big number. Like that's my life. Like feeling the greatest you ever felt, but then taking that and dwarfing that by the feelings you get when you do some of these practices between the meditation. We're talking about shrooms, but like shrooms, meditation, yada yada yada. And then when you couple and more, like so you add these things together, you do shrooms with meditation, with sound baths, with on a full moon, whatever, and it's just like additive. So it's like these are all like waves coming together where you're just stacking waves. And the feeling you just feel is I literally walk around like I'm just in La La Land. I feel so good. Good is not even a word. It's almost like not unfathomable to me, but to throw that to somebody else, I'll use the word unfathomable, but it's my existence now that I like can capture like all the time, that I'm just like, please, somebody try some of this. Just don't you have to do this, but do something here. One or two or three of these things to get to this feeling, and you'll never look back.
I think you may be getting a call from me or a text from me after this podcast to feel like, Reggie, where do I got my hands on these? I'm a
certain thing, but offline.
Yeah. I recreationally use marijuana, and you were talking about sound baths, and so I took some edibles, and I went to this lab, this immersive museum called Mercer Labs. It's again an immersive museum. They have 3D, 4D kind of art that's displayed, and so when you were talking about sound baths, they have this room that's called, I think it's called the 4D room, where you go in and you just sit down, and the walls are projecting sound, the ceiling is projecting sound, and the floor is projecting sound, and so you almost feel like you're entrenched with the waves, the sound waves, and it was a serene feeling. It was a euphoric feeling. Have you ever heard of this lab? Have you ever checked it out?
You're gonna have to give me that info because it'll put it on my list. But my friend, he mentioned to me this place. Let me see. I'll find it real quick. It's some kind of
While you pull that up, I'll share this Mercer lab that I was telling you about.
I think I was gonna go there.
Entering a high-tech dream world are these best friends Cheska Hingano and Dana Pangao, drinking in the dazzling transformation across 3 floors of Manhattan's 21 Day Street.
It's out of this world.
They lounge and they swing and spin through 15 mind-blowing installation rooms, from flashy to cave-like, robotic, and bathed all in red or all in gold, with spaces where
That
adults
room
and
was wild
children
for
get
me.
to make art of their own.
It goes beyond
It's gonna go on my list. I'm gonna let my boys know.
and something that you can just sense in your skin and like feel it inside.
The goal is to surprise and inspire, said Mercer Labs creator, celebrated New York-based artist Roy Nahum.
Yeah.
So go pull up MEOWWOLF, Meow Wolf.
Yeah, well, immersive art experience, interactive exhibits.
That would be it. My friend, I don't know where all this is exists. They're like in different states, but I was thinking of maybe I don't use maybe, but like look into it. Go to one of these.
Yeah, Wolf is immersive art adventure. Step inside, explore, and uncover the unexpected.
That would be good
Our
on.
mission is to inspire creativity in people's lives through art, exploration, and play so that imagination will transform our worlds. Yeah, Wolf is an immersive art adventure. Okay, yep. All right. I'll put this on a list.
Yeah,
Check it out.
that's on my list.
Look
And
out.
now I have Mercer Labs as well.
All locations. They looks like they don't have one in New York. Looks like they have a location in Houston, Texas, Denver.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay with going to like
Las Vegas.
one of these places.
Oh, it says okay. They have a location coming to New York, coming soon.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So if you wait a little bit, it looks like they'll be opening up a location in New York.
Yeah, there's no urgency, but it's on a list. I mean, any of these additional experiences are kind of cool, especially when you mix them together. You know, mix the thing like you talked about. You had the weeds with the weed with the Mercer Labs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just adds a whole nother. And then when you're already a creative, when your mind is really already pretty honed, right? And then you add these things, it's just you take off to a whole different level, which is what happens for me. Like I just start getting like super duper creative. Um, and just and then when I'm having conversation and I'm talking about stuff, I have people's like mind blown.
Yeah. Do you think it has the opposite effect on some people? Do you think it has the opposite effect in terms of they don't feel creative, they get lazy, they
I
feel less inspired?
I'm gonna say no because
Hmm.
you're creating new neural pathways. So new neural pathways and creating new neural pathways to thinking straight
Hmm.
will not have you doing less or thinking less. It's gonna put just correcting your behavior, correcting your. I've never heard of anyone gaining new neural pathways and getting and going backwards.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
I have heard of people having bad trips though off of uh rooms, but I think that's what you were saying earlier. Maybe it's they were in a bad state of mind. It just wasn't the right place or the right time to do it. Most likely if you're
or they need correction in their life. So again, I don't label it as bad. I mean, there are
Mhm,
like especially again with shrooms, I know it points you to the truth. So if you're saying that this is bad, but it's pointing you to the truth is that you need to work on something that you're not working on, and you're just calling it bad, but you're in
mhm,
denial. And a lot of us will sit in denial, and because we don't want to deal with things, but it doesn't help not to deal with it because at some point you're gonna get put up against this thing. You keep avoiding something, eventually it's gonna show up in your face where you can't run, when you get backed into a corner. This happens all the time. It's just better to face it when you're like, you know what? I'm gonna be bold, I'm gonna go at it. Let's go. Because the thing about it is all temporary when it's all said and done. You face it, it's not past you, you know. You just got to get to it and put it there and go, okay, let's go. And put on your boxing gloves or whatever you have to do and deal with it.
uh, it sounds like you're also describing depression and anxiety in a lot of ways too, where people know that something is bothering them, but they take no action to address it, face it head on. Rather, they're passive with it. It's swept under the carpet, and it builds until it blows up, and then it's in your face.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's in your face, you either again, like you said, you put on the boxing gloves, or you teeter and you run.
You do a lot of running.
Yeah. You heard of this guy named Brian Johnson, by the way?
Mm-hmm. I've heard
What do
of
you
him.
think about his theory of don't die? He
Okay, so I can speak to that, not even specific to him. Actually, I do have a book, Don't Die, so that might be his book. Actually, it's right behind me. So I don't need to read these books. I mean, this sounds kind of conceited, but I'm not saying it in that way because I'm already living it. A lot of my books, when I start to read them, it's like knowledge I already like have, and and I'm kind of practicing. So I just read books for fun, and because I like how people express themselves and that thing. But it's like usually I'm already on a path of and kind of understanding things a certain way, and then a book pops up and I may buy it and read it, and I'm like, okay, or just buy it just to have it. I have a lot to say about Don't Die, and I'm probably not gonna really say it all here because it's because of the things that I know. It's too controversial for a lot of people. Or they're gonna just try to kind of like say that's what are you talking about. The short of it is I'll say so. This is how I'm gonna frame it. A lot of religions and people in general think that you have to die to go to heavens and things like that, right? And you go through reincarnation because and maybe in one religion, like Hinduism or whatever, right? They like you come back, do another iteration, but ultimately you want to get to samadhi, right? This sort of ultimately place this path, right? But the thing about it, right? So here's how I'm gonna break down don't die and just in general. So I believe everything's possible. So I'll stop with that. That's my way to break that. That's my way to speak to that.
Mhm.
Since I think everything is not even think, since I know, because here's this thing. People will say everything is possible, but then tell you certain things aren't possible. What are we talking about here? Everything's possible, but you have to die. But then you're telling me that living forever is not possible. So which one is it? And then you're going to try to rationally or whatever way reason me through why you think that is. But then that doesn't make sense. That contradicts everything as possible. So that's my short way to speak to that. So I know because not I know like it's just what I know, meaning like it's like what I think. No, I know you can live forever. I'll just leave it at that. But a lot of
So
people,
you think his program
I don't know what his
blueprint
program is.
works? Okay, well
He
he's
don't
got
need a
this program
program.
called he's got this program called Blueprint where he has a bunch of supplements and uh, protein powders that you could take that
No, you
help
don't have to do
you.
all of that because I don't do that. And
Mhm.
yeah. Anyway, maybe like offline I'll share with you more. But for people to get what I'm saying, you got to be super open minded. And there are some experiences I've had that have been beyond profound that could speak to. Okay, yeah, that could speak. I'll give you. No, I won't give you it because it's too much. It's too much for the for. I know it is
Okay.
because I've shared certain things and people just act like I said nothing or kind of like again try to dismiss it and I'm like I'm living this. I'm living
I,
what you think is not the case, but that's fine. I'm going to start to show people more and more as we move forward because it's that time because I'm getting signs of like and overwhelming feelings that it's time to kind of show people some things so that they can break out of the mold of where they're stuck. So, but to the point of back to your question, I know you don't have to die. It's going to challenge what a lot of people have to say, but you tell me what you think, and that's fine. I'm not here to tell you what I think. I'm here to tell you what I know. I don't think.
I think I think Brian Johnson is onto some cool discoveries. I think people thought LeBron James spent a lot of money on his body, over $1 million. This guy spends $2 million a year on his body, and he's collecting all this data on human biology, with just through of his own body. Uh, and he monitors every single thing he puts in his body. Um, and he's 48, I think, right now, but his biological um receptors are from, when they scan him, it's like he's got the body of an 18-year-old. So I think he's onto some cool stuff. Who really knows what it's a hypothesis. Who knows what will happen uh with the stuff he's doing, but he only here.
Cause loss of age. As we enter Brian's clinic,
this uses multispectral imaging, and then it generates 10 data points on your skin health.
we see a room full of high-tech, hospital-grade gear chosen to measure his progress and hopefully help turn back the hands of time. But Brian believes it's not about what you start doing, it's what you stop.
Instead of doing something positive, stop the negative. So instead of trying to choose a supplement that you want to take, stop going to bed late or stop skipping exercise. So oftentimes, stopping is more powerful than starting.
And it's about where you may live and what you eat.
In blue zones, we're seeing people who live below the U.S. poverty line living about 10 years longer than Americans.
Author Dan Buettner has written extensively about so-called blue zones, but says that living longer doesn't have to be so complicated.
We know, for example, people who eat beans. Beans are the cheapest food in the grocery store, live about 4 years longer than people who don't eat beans. So I'd much rather see people eating beans than shooting themselves up with other people's blood.
Brian says his pricey investment in himself has turned back his biological clock by 5 years, and he hopes to live a long life with the people he loves.
I'm just so happy I get to exist. I'm so pleased that I'm alive, and I just want to keep on playing, and I hope others do too.
Is he talking about the same stuff in his book? Did you get a chance to read his book?
No, I haven't read it. I haven't read it, but I have different. I only say theories because I don't have theories. I have knowledge that I've gained or that I've accessed. That even what he's saying, you don't need to do any of that stuff. And I'm not saying like he's saying some bad stuff. I mean, hey, sure, eat certain supplements and vitamins, things like that. But we're more powerful than that. I'll just say that. In maybe in the next iteration of podcast, or what have you, depending on what I feel, I'll reveal some more stuff. But I know there's certain things that I say. I definitely know people aren't ready because I've had exchanges with people and I've shared certain things, and the reception is not there because what happens is a lot of us are boxed in. I'm not thinking out of the box. And even when we think out of the box, we think out of one box into another box. You got to be open to all, like everything there is to know. And if you're not, you're only going to be open to what it is for you to know or what it is that you know. And a lot of times, like you don't expand beyond So, yeah. Well, some of the things he's saying, fine, supplements, things like that, what have you, but you don't even have to do that much. You can take a whole nother approach to getting to whatever the thing it is that you desire.
What is that other approach?
I mean, I can just say even using your imagination. Like Einstein says, your imagination is more important than knowledge. Because within the word imagination, and I've shared this with people, the word imagine says, I am a genie. Look at it. Look at it on paper.
I'm looking it up right now.
It's almost directly spelled out like that. I am a genie. Or I am a magi. A magi is a sorcerer. I am a genie. You could have no knowledge of a thing, right? And have your imagination be so profoundly like well-versed. You can be so well-versed in using your imagination that you can get more than the person who has knowledge. Because plenty of people have knowledge and don't know how to apply it. You need zero knowledge. And if you have an imagination that you know how to use with expertise, you can get anything. So I'm going to even say to that, using your imagination is one.
I like that. I like what you said. Imagination does go a long way. Like I don't think I would ever been able to build this podcast as far as it's come, and I still think it's in its infancy, without imagination, without saying, "Hey, this is what my vision is. Here's how I want to lead it. Here is what I want to achieve from it, and here are the outcomes from it." So, yeah, imagination definitely goes a long way. Yeah, you know what pulls my imagination away from me is it's the mundane work I do, like the corporate lifestyle, the 9 to 5. It just sucks the imagination away, little by little, every day. And so, you know, it's one of the reasons why I experiment with recreational marijuana, because I feel like it sparks that, it gives that imagination fuel to ignite itself again. I don't know if you feel the same way.
No, because for me, I got to a place because of the practice of just living or working towards the truth and everything else has sort of gotten me away from being as affected by the day to day. Like to me, that's like that takes no bandwidth because majority of my bandwidth goes towards me helping myself, helping the world, meditating, whether listening to audios, reading books. I read a lot of it. For example, this year alone, I read, the book is not in front of me, but this book called The Seven Spiritual, if it's right behind me. The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success. I read this book alone 26 times this year. 26 times I read this book this year alone. And I've read other books too. I read another book called As a Man Thinketh, or As You Think. I read that like at least 4 times this year. I've also listened to it audio, and then I read other books as well. So I've read about, if you count this 26 times, the other books, I'm over 40 books this year. So how do I not be thwarted by my day to day? Is I do things that keep my activity levels higher. In terms of like how I think. I do a lot of affirmations. I was writing in journals every day for years up until a few days ago. I said I'm going to chill on that because it's so regimented. I don't really need to do that. I just now do it in my head.
I was waiting for you to say regimented.
Yeah. So I have so many practices that I follow that, like a lot of affirmations in my head, a lot of praying for the world in my head, a lot of saying positive things in my head. That's what keeps me where I need to be, so that the world outside of me, because for me, it's not, if you say it's the world outside of you, then we're missing something. We're not understanding that if you're whole within yourself, nothing outside of you is gonna affect you in that way. So like even there's a quote, I think it's a Chinese, I don't know where it comes from, but it says, when there's no enemy inside, the enemy outside will do you no harm. So when you're like full in who you are and understanding who you are and infinite and all those types of words I use, then the outside doesn't matter, right? So it's not going to take my creativity away because I'm not going to allow it, right? I'm constantly staying in the space of creativity. I'm always, playing with stuff, playing with words, putting things together, reading, like I said, reading a lot, listening to audios, again, the affirmations, like all of these things are constantly going on in my head. So it keeps me at a place where I'm like always fortified. And that's what I say this, and like people may hear, oh, he thinks no, I'm saying this so that maybe you will do some of this stuff or make it a part of your being, as I talked about in the first video, a to-be list, right? My thing is like, make this stuff a part of your life, so it's like who you are, and the things I'm talking about will actually have you feeling like so wonderful, great, amazing. You're not talking negativity about people, judging people, all this sort of stuff, because you're too busy like loving yourself and loving life and loving everyone. So this is where I impart that, to share it, because was I always this way? No, I had something in me, but then I started making it a part of me in terms of like actually making it a part of what I know, which is to say what I live, not just making it be something that I was aware of. Oh, I know if I do this and I know if I do that, but I'm not doing it. I'm not being it. There's a difference when you actually make it a part of your life. Now it changes the dynamic because now you're not talking about it anymore. Now it's just not something that's floating over here off in the wind or, at the back of your mind. It's like, no, this is of me. Every day I'm exercising, stretching, journaling, affirmations, praying for every single day. I pray infinitely for the world and then some. Like I say, I pray in my head. This prayer is for the world infinitely, in abundance and love and gratitude and all this stuff. Anyone can do this. And then in this book, he talks about things like, this is a phenomenal book, The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success, where he talks about, basically like law of giving and receiving, and like giving, where I think it's in that way, he basically says you don't have to physically give somebody something. Like he says, silently wish everyone you encounter happiness, joy, and laughter. By giving and receiving the gifts of caring, affection, appreciation and love, you will keep wealth circulating in your life. A lot of us are too much caught up in ourselves to realize like that's something we can do. I'm not giving them that. I'm not giving. I'm not even. My life is not. No, that's not the point. Yeah, because we are giving. We should be giving. We should be living in service, right? What have you? Those types of things. So for me, it's like understanding that. So I make it a part of my life, and it's all points throughout, like every day and then throughout. So as to not to be affected by the things. I don't care about the politics, and that has nothing to do with me. Here's what I do. I pray for everyone. Hey, more compassion, especially if someone's misbehaving, things like that. So that keeps me going, keeps me creative, keeps me in a love state, keeps me in an elevated state of mind and thought and body and all that kind of stuff. So in spirit.
It sounds like you spend your time intentionally, and that's what I'm hearing. It's like
Exactly. That's part of it. Even in here, there's the law of one of the laws is, and this is, not this is me before the book, but the law of intention and desire. So I'll give you the laws of the 7 in this book. There is the law of pure potentiality, which is like everything comes from like possibility, and you can create from this formless stuff that exists in the universe to create anything. We all came from this formlessness, and we all created from that in this form of like what we are. So the law of potentiality, the law of giving and receiving. As you give more and you receive, like you open up the door to be received more and giving, and like it's sort of like cyclical, what have you. And then we know, like specifically, one aspect is with money. Some people hoard money, but even the word money, currency means it's meant to move like a current. So when you don't give money, or if you give it with the wrong intent, that's not the best way. But if you give it openly, intentionally, as you use the word, you will keep the flow of money going in and out, and that allows more money to come into your world and that type of thing. But in any case, the law of giving and receiving, the law of karma and the cause and effect, right? Or cause and effect. We understand what karma is. But one thing with karma, people always think of karma as a bad thing, and it doesn't have to be that. Because karma is like, you get back what you put out kind of thing. But then what you have to realize is you can actually change your karma to make it like karma that works in your favor, especially if something's going on in your life, or you understand it to be think it to be a certain way, you can then revert that almost like to something that will be more beneficial to you by like, doing good actions and deeds and things like that, or meditating and kind of cleaning yourself up. Meditating is like taking yourself and putting yourself in, like as if you're a rag that goes in the water, and you like, rinse yourself, and then you take some stain away from you, right? So then the law of least effort, a lot of what we do, we talk about like hustling for it, which is nonsense, this hustle culture stuff or whatever. No, you don't see nature hustling, making things hard, birds and out there doing their bird thing, and the flowers out there doing their flower thing, and the plants out there, the trees out there doing their plant thing, all effortlessly. We're the ones who think it's about like making it hard. The less you do, the law of least effort, the more you get. Like that's how my life is going. I'm just like doing less and less. I mean, I do my job and stuff like that, but I'm not I'm not making it like, oh, God. I'm just like, oh, okay.
I love that. I just want to expand on that a little bit, because that's exactly where my state of mind was a few years ago. But as I've gotten older, I've realized is that less is more.
It is.
And I had like 20 different side hustles, from starting a maid company to doing real estate to property management, all these things on top of like balancing your corporate life, uh, family, relationships, friendships. And I realized all this other stuff is absolutely nonsense. They're all distractions. And I've realized less is more.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the last
I wish
three,
people,
I'll just say them real quick, is the law of intention and desire, the law of detachment, and the law of dharma, or purpose in life, right? So,
what is that? What's the last one? What is the law of Dharma?
well, it's just like your purpose. You're here to do a certain thing. Like everyone has a purpose on this planet. So sort of like find your purpose, and basically like then like essentially ultimately once you figure it out, you basically then, use your purpose to sort of affect the world in a way that it needs to be affected, which is to say show up in the world for each and every one of us each and every day and live in purpose. Which for me, I'm living in purpose, which is really motivating, inspiring people, raising consciousness. I stated it some years ago, and I fell to the floor after I read it. So I knew that was what it was, because it was like me living in truth. My truth is like I'm going to inspire and raise the consciousness of billions through inspired word. And I said I'm going to use my mind and creativity to create that reality, and power and purpose, or compass was powered by God. I wrote that on a piece of paper one night. The next morning I was reading it, 4 o'clock in the morning, stood up from the floor, walked out of my room, and was dropped to the floor twice. So I was like, as I fell to the floor, I was crying because I knew like that to be the truth. And that's what I've been doing. I mean, I was doing it ahead of that, but now it's sort of like progressing because now I have a book and now I'm going to have some more stuff, whatever. And it's going to keep mushrooming into more and more and more and more. Where I'm standing ahead of people and, having conversation or lectures and things like that, where I'm speaking to things that can really help to open up people's minds and such. But I do it
I was
like
going to ask you.
effortlessly.
I was going to ask you what is next for you in terms of the audiobook. You've got the book. What's next for Reggie?
Well, it'll just be what it's gonna be. It's between like more books, more like business, open up a business that aligns with like, things that I could like do under the that basically allows me to do things under the business, whether it be like speaking engagements and things of that nature. So put it under the heading of a business. Other business that might be like paraphernalia, like merchandise, because people ask about that. Oh, I want one of your shirts because I created a couple shirts with my logo and people like, oh, I want one of those, but I'm not leading with that. So I just sort of like wear it, but I'm like, I'll get to that eventually. And other things as well, whether shirts and calendar, who knows? I mean, my friends like, you should do all this stuff. But for me, I was not leading with that. I know if the money's there, like, but I'm not living for money. So the money will automatically be there because, why are we living that way? I'm living for purpose, right? So my purpose is about affecting people, inspiring people, motivating people, challenging people, getting people to think differently and change the script that they're working off of, those types of things. So that's my main agenda. So anything that falls under there, I have my trademark that I was had put through the trademark U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and I let it lapse because I didn't get it commercialized. So I'm putting it through again. And then this go around, I gotta make sure I get it out there commercialized. So putting like my logo on, like I said, on t-shirts, sweaters, things of that, sweatshirts and other things. And then just constantly building from there because there's infinite creativity that can come from it. So I'm just gonna allow things to just sort of happen without thinking about it. As I say, like there's no thinking that's necessary.
Do you plan on leveraging social media to expand that brand?
I mean, people already know me to a degree on social media, but the goal, at some point would be whether I use some type of like persons that like know, that well versed in how to market better than I'm doing, because I don't put that much into it, but I at least have a brand and people know me, but I can like build it up to a whole nother level, but just using the right tools and resources. So. But it's happening regardless. I mean, get educated is known. Like it's known a decent level as it is because even in the office or wherever people like you're getting educated, like that type of thing. Like if you were standing with me in my office, they were like they would like they might make a joke like that. Yeah, you getting educated right now. So they're helping to build my brand. I'm just gonna keep it going and growing.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I think when she has a good comeback, it'll be like, "You just got educated," and we'll get a kick out. We'll get a kick out of that. By the way, she's in Texas right now, and I was,
Yep.
I told,
That's one of her spots.
yep. She wants me to go to Texas with her so bad, and I've been meaning to go, but just I kept tell myself like, "Hey, I'll go," but then we shifted into this like from work from home to get your asses back in the office, and I just haven't got a chance to go to Texas. I've been to Texas before, but I want to go with her to Dallas because she wants to take me to all these nice restaurants she goes to, so get some cowboy boots. Have you ever been to Texas?
I've been to Houston a couple times. That's it. Yeah,
Okay.
only Houston.
What do you think about Texas?
Houston was okay. I mean, I did a couple. I went to my friend had actually so I was going there for like this not wealth seminar. It was self-development conference. And I pretty much was in the conference. I mean, I did a little bit of coming out, but it was mostly in the conference. One time, I don't even maybe both times were at the mall, whatever that mall is. It's not the Galleria. What's the name of that mall? There's a big mall in Houston. So I didn't do too much exploration, but it was okay. I mean, my time there was okay. I would need to go back and actually do more exploration, whether in Houston or I heard Dallas was spot, but some of the I'll get to it. It's not like currently on my list. I'm thinking of other places and things, but maybe eventually.
I think you're thinking of the Galleria Mall.
It
Or
is.
you thinking about
I said that right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Galleria Mall. Pretty big. It is the Galleria
When I
Mall.
think about big malls, I think about American Dream on the
Yeah,
East
I've
Coast.
heard
That
of
thing
it.
is a massive. Have you ever been?
That's the one where in
New Jersey.
yeah, I thought so. No, I've only driven by it a bunch of times, but there's a bigger mall than that, isn't there? Like the Mall of America or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's in the West Coast, but the biggest mall in the East Coast is the American Dream Mall.
Is that
And
big?
yeah, Reggie, it is massive. It's so big they have a skiing resort in there.
Yeah, I
They've
heard
got
of
a
that.
they've got a Nickelodeon pandemonium in there with rides and everything. They got a Ferris wheel sticking out of
Yeah,
the building.
I've seen the Ferris. Yeah, I know it's pretty big. Yeah, but I didn't know how big it was.
And then they've separated the luxury stores from like I guess the small brand stores. So there's a whole luxury section. They've got restaurants in there. But what I heard last about the mall was that they were, I think, teetering with bankruptcy because of the lack of foot traffic not being there. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to it. Reggie, I really appreciate you doing this on a school night, and
Yeah, I'm about to go to bed. Speaking of,
yeah, and I could tell you're it's, maybe time for you to turn in, and I'm certainly exhausted too. So thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun for me, and I really meant everything I said when I said you have a positive effect on me. Your words, the affirmations, spells.
thank
I
you.
appreciate you coming on again, and
My
hopefully we
pleasure.
can do this
Thank you for
again.
having me. I appreciate it.